delay. So let's get started. Give me a second. I have to pull this up again. The document up again. It's always embarrassing when the computer doesn't work properly. But I think we're all right now. And I have my spare computer ready in case. Give me 1 second. All right, Jaiva Dharma. Okay. Let's try this. Okay, hopefully, yeah, everyone can hear me. So let me also mute everybody. I think I have to do that again. Okay, seems to be working much better. Let me share the screen. Okay, it's working. Okay, so Om Gana Timidandasha Gananjana Shalakya Chakshur Unmiritam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So we're continuing with our study of the Jaiva Dharma. Let me just make sure we're still online. Yes, we are. Thank you. So this is chapter 2. In chapter 1, we talked about eternal Dharma and temporary Dharma, Nitya and Naimittika Dharma. Nitya Dharma means the eternal Dharma of the soul, and Naimittika means temporary Dharma in this world, or temporary nature. And when the soul is exposed to this material nature, then it manifests a temporary nature, which is called nisarga. I think some of you remember that. That's not the temporary nature. I mean, that's not the important thing. We're interested in the eternal nature of the soul, which was described in the last chapter as I don't need a new laptop now. It's actually working now. I figure out what the problem was. So, okay, someone asked me that question. So the eternal nature of the soul is Jivara Swarupohoy Nitya Krishna Das, according to the Chaitanya Charitamrita Krishnas Kaviraj Goswami. So now we're going to go to chapter 2, which talks about the Jiva's eternal Dharma. That's called Nitya Dharma, pure and everlasting. And this is a discussion between Prema Das Babaji and a new devotee who was a sannyasi, a Mayavadi sannyasi, before he became exposed to Krishna's holy name and attracted to Krishna consciousness, and who moved to Mayapur, and he took shelter of this Prema Das Babaji. And Prema Das Babaji is giving him instructions. So right now we're at the philosophical section. It's all philosophical, but it's a story that makes the digestion of the philosophy a little bit more palatable. So the next day in the morning, Prema Das Babaji was absorbed in his mood of Braja, and the sannyasi could not find any opportunity to ask him questions. At noon, after begging, both sat in the Madhavi and Jasmine bower. So here's the point. So he was absorbed in his internal meditation, in his swarup, his eternal form in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, while his external body was just sitting there. Don't say material body, physical body was just sitting there. So it took until noon till he came back to external consciousness. Paramahansa Babaji spoke in a compassionate tone. O best of devotees, are you convinced after hearing the conclusions concerning Dharma? Hearing this, the sannyasi in great bliss again inquired, "O Prabhu, if the jiva," that's us, "is a very small object, how can its eternal dharma be complete and pure? If its dharma manifests along with the jiva's manifestation, how can it be eternal?" This is actually really, really, really important questions. So the question is, he's asking the question whether the jiva actually manifests here. Hearing these two questions, Paramahamsa Babaji, smiling while remembering the lotus feet of Sri Satchidananda, that's Lord Chaitanya began to speak. "Dear sir, the jiva is a small particle, but his dharma is complete, pure, and eternal. Being small is simply a description of it as an object. The sole great object is Param Brahman, or Krishna. All the jivas are as unlimited small particles. Just as sparks arise from a huge fire, the jivas arise from the extensive conscious form of Krishna. Just as the individual sparks, in other words, we don't arise from the Tatashta Shakti, we arise from Krishna. We're expansions of Krishna directly. Got it? Just as the individual sparks possess the Shakti of a full fire, so each jiva is able to be the locus of manifesting pure dharma of consciousness. Just as the spark attains the power to burn and become a huge fire and is able to burn the universe, so one jiva attaining Krishna, the object of prema, is able to manifest a great flood of prema. And of course, the prime example for us is His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Okay. I just want to keep an eye on one thing. Everything's working well now. Not a problem. As long as the jiva does not contact the real object possessing dharma, the small conscious jiva is unable to naturally manifest its full dharma. Dharma manifests in contact with real object possessing dharma, which is Krishna. So we only manifest our nitya dharma, eternal dharma, when we're in contact with Krishna. Otherwise, we manifest what's called nisarga, the temporary dharma. And the example given in the first chapter is water, when it's at the right temperature, manifests its real dharma. But when it's in contact with the cold or the absence of heat, cold is actually the absence of heat. It's actually a quite appropriate comparison. When it's in contact with cold or when it's the absence of heat, then the water manifests a temporary dharma, which is a solid. Everybody understands that. So that's really important to understand that. So cold is not an entity in and of itself. Heat is. Does everybody understand that? Because without heat, cold manifests. But without cold, or with cold, heat could still manifest. I mean, it's a negative quality. So in other words, without Krishna, our real dharma doesn't manifest. Or without heat, the real dharma of water doesn't manifest. Because without the heat of the sun, the light of the sun, and the heat of the sun, then the temperature drops to almost absolute zero. So not only is water not liquid, there are no liquids. And not only that, everything, all the atomic movements come to what? Come to stop or hold. So that's the absence of Krishna. Anyway, that's the metaphor. Please search out how the jiva's eternal dharma manifests nicely. Prema is the jiva's eternal dharma. The jiva is not dull matter. It is an object beyond matter. Consciousness is its constitution. Prema is its dharma. Being the servant of Krishna is pure prema. Wow. Thus, prema in the form of being Krishna's servant is the jiva's innate dharma, unless it's in contact with material energy. The jiva has two states, a pure state and a bound state. That means liberated, Krishna conscious, or not Krishna conscious, the absence of Krishna consciousness, in which we're bound by Krishna's external energy. In its pure state, the jiva is purely conscious. It has no relationship with matter. In the pure state, the jiva is still a small object. This small object makes it possible for the jiva to have another state. There's like the smallness of a spark makes it possible for the spark to have another state that's not light and heat. Krishna, the great conscious object by his nature, does not have another state. Interesting. Let me repeat that. Krishna, the great conscious object by his nature, does not have another state. In other words, he doesn't have a material state. He has different incarnations, different appearances, different moods. You know, dear Tata, dear Data, dear Vasanta, dear Lalita, all these different moods, different relationships, different devotees, but he doesn't have a material state. He doesn't touch Maya. He doesn't touch illusion. By his nature, he is great, complete, and pure, and eternal. The jiva, by its constitution, is small, fragmented, capable of becoming impure. So in essence, it doesn't really become impure, but it becomes covered so it appears impure, and recent. That's interesting. So he becomes what appears to be recent. Okay. By the Dharma, the jiva is great, unfragmented, pure, and eternal. As long as the jiva is pure, it manifests as Dharma purely. When the jiva is impure, by relationship with Maya, it becomes impure. Got it? Endowed with the transformation of its Dharma without shelter. So there's a transformation of its normal state, that's the Dharma, because of its contact with Maya or relationship with Maya without shelter, and is afflicted by happiness and distress. So we are afflicted by happiness and distress. Forgetting his state of being a servant of Krishna, the jiva accepts movement in samsara. So actually, Babaji is repeating himself here, just so we understand the point. As long as the jiva remains pure, it identifies with its dharma, which is servant of Krishna. The jiva identifies itself as a servant, which is what I just said. Anyway, I get ahead of myself. When the jiva becomes impure, let me just see something. Whoops, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Just want to make sure everything's still working. When the jiva becomes impure by relating to Maya, its identity becomes restricted and accepts various forms. By relationship with Maya, the jiva's pure swarup becomes covered by the subtle and gross bodies. The subtle body develops a particular identity. This identity becomes mixed with the identity of the gross body and thus develops into a third identity. So in other words, we have a subtle body, which is called a ghostly body, linga sarira, whatever you may call it, astral body, which is the body, the mental body. And that mental body develops a particular identity when the living entity is covered by the subtle energy of the Lord. And this identity becomes mixed with the identity of the gross body, the blood and the pus, or the Pancha Mahabhuta, to be more specific, and thus develops into a third identity. In its pure body, the jiva is merely a servant of Krishna. In its subtle body, the jiva thinks itself the enjoyer of the results of the actions. It thinks itself to be an enjoyer. So, so that's the mental body. In the mental body, you think, I'm the enjoyer. I'm the proprietor. These are the two divisions. Really, to be specific, these are the two divisions of ahankara, or false ego. I am the proprietor. I'm the enjoyer. Got it? Ahankara. Obtaining a gross body, the jiva thinks, I am Brahman. so that it gets specific. The subtle body may not be specific. It's just that I am the enjoyer. I'm the proprietor. And that manifests in a very specific way when the jiva takes the gross body. The jiva thinks, I am a Brahmin, I am a king, I am poor, I am suffering, I am conquered by disease and lamentation, I'm a woman, I'm a master of so and so, etc. Many gross identities manifest. And generally, in this world, we're thinking of our gross identities. We may not put to words the concept that I'm the enjoyer, but we are thinking like that. So everything is based upon our envy. We were talking about this in class. Every aspect of our consciousness in the conditioned state is based upon the idea of emulating or being envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything in the conditioned state is based upon that foundational principle of the subtle body. It's the foundation of our consciousness. Whether we were talking about this morning, whether you're going to be critical of someone, or criticize someone in an offensive way, or whether you're going to praise someone, it's all coming from the false ego foundational principles. So endowed with such false identities, the jiva swadharma becomes distorted, obviously. Pure prema is the swadharma. What is swadharma? Our original dharma. That is servant of Krishna, become distorted. Everyone understands distorted, reflected. Pure prema is the swara dharma of the pure jiva. In other words, the prema is pure love of God without any selfish motivation. This prema becomes manifest in the subtle body in a distorted way as happiness, distress, attachment, and repulsion. So we all have these feelings. We're happy, we're in distress, you have some pain in the body, or happy, everything worked out. Like today, for example, today I went to the doctor. I went to the doctor. I do have a material body. And healing of some little operation I had is going on very well. The doctor said, oh, it's great. So that was happiness. And distress, distress happened when I had to find out I had to have the operation. And then I'm attached to things healing very well. And I'm repulsed by something ugly or someone who doesn't chant well. Sorry about that. In the gross body, this becomes deeply transformed into eating, drinking, and associating materialistically for happiness. Of course, Krishna allows us to transform these particular activities into spiritual activities: eating prasadam, drinking prasadam beverages, or drinking water just to get the energy to serve Krishna, and associating spiritually for happiness. The jivas, I was just listening to one devotee, a memory that he had, it was Dayananda. He said he joined the movement because he wanted that association that was there in the temple. He really liked that atmosphere of the devotees there. The jiva's eternal dharma manifests only in the jiva's pure state. The jiva's eternal dharma manifests only in the jiva's pure state. It repeated it purposely. The dharma which manifests in the jiva's bound state, that's our present state, is temporary, naimitika. This is very repetitive, but it's important to understand. Eternal dharma is by nature complete, pure, and everlasting. I will explain temporary dharma thoroughly on another day. The pure Vaishnava dharma, described in the Bhagavatam, is eternal dharma. Dharmas spread in the material world can be divided into three categories. In other words, the dharmas that you have, or the duties you have in this world, as devotees, can be expanded into three categories: eternal nitya dharma, occasional naimitika dharma, and impermanent anitya dharma. Dharmas in which these are important concepts. So Nitya Dharma would be when you're serving Krishna. Naimittika Dharma would be, obligatory activities that are not counterproductive to Krishna consciousness. And impermanent, anicca, would be things that we think are our duties that draw us away from Krishna. Dharmas in which the Lord and the eternal Jiva are not accepted are called anicca or impermanent. In other words, they're not connected to Krishna consciousness. But naimittika dharmas, obligatory dharmas in this world, are dharmas that can be connected to Krishna consciousness. Like taking care of your family like that. They're essential. One has to perform them as long as one's living in the material world, unless one's a Babaji. Dharmas which accept the Lord and the Jiva to be eternal, but to desire to attain the mercy of the Lord by temporary methods are called naimittika dharmas. Those are like the ritualistic Brahminical activities. That'll be explained later on. Those dharmas which endeavor to attain servitude to Krishna by pure prema are called eternal dharmas, like chanting the Lord's holy names, hearing the Bhagavatam, hearing Krishna Katha like we're doing now. This is called Nitya Dharma, the activity we're engaged in now. Now, after this, I don't know about all you, but later on, I will take rest at night. That is Naimittika Dharma. It contributes to Krishna consciousness, not against Krishna consciousness. Unless I rest for 24 hours, that's not a good idea. But I have to rest so I can serve Krishna. So these are dharmas that should be executed, but they're temporary. Because in the spiritual world, there's no need of going to sleep or resting. Though known by different names in different countries and different races and different languages, this eternal dharma is one and is most excellent. Let me explain that. Eternal dharma means you're a servant of God. Though God may be called Allah or Jehovah or Yahweh, or one may have different aspects of service cooked differently for God in different cultures. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was quite liberal in that regard. And his Chaitanya Shikshamrita, which Prabhupada also loved and recommended that we read, he states that when one goes into a church or a mosque or some building where God is being worshipped in a different religion or with a different culture, one appreciates, yes, they're worshiping the same God. So we do not, this is really important, we do not discriminate and say that Nitya Dharma is only done in Indian clothes, dhotis. So sorry about that. I know people don't like me talking about dhotis, but I do sometimes. Or to say the Nitya Dharma is only done by offering pakoras to Krishna. You can offer pizza to Krishna. That's also Nitya Dharma, if you offer with love and devotion. Vaishnava Dharma, current in India, is an example of eternal Dharma. The great souls endowed with great bliss, great souls, great bliss, accept and support the spotless state of Vaishnava Dharma taught by the son of Sachi. Of course, that's Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. At this point, the sannyasi, feeling ecstasy, folding his hands, exclaimed, Prabhu, that means master. Sometimes people get upset because they're called Prabhu, but Prabhu means my master. And the feminine of Prabhu, which we should call the ladies, is Prabhu. I see the excellence of the spotless Vaishnava Dharma revealed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I see the inferiority of Advaita. Advaita means oneness, or not dual, Vada, or impersonalism. That everything is one, there's no difference between the Lord, the energies, or whatever. This is the Advaita philosophy, or Mayavad philosophy, impersonal philosophy, nirvishesha. That means no distinctions. Propagated by Shankaracharya. But something has arisen in my mind that I do not want to withhold from you, is the state of Mahabhava in prema that Advaita, that Krishna Chaitanya showed, different from the perfection of Advaita. Now, this is really important. He's not referring to Advaita Charya here. Let me just make this really clear. Advaita means becoming one with God, or becoming one with everything. In other words, nirvishesha, there's no distinction. There's no distinction of the different categories. You don't have the distinction between Vishnu Tattva, Maya, Krishna's energy, Jiva Tattva. There's no distinction. It's all one. When you realize it, Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, and all that other nice stuff. So how is the state of Mahabhava that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu manifested different from just impersonalism? It's a really important question. Paramahansa Babaji, hearing the name of Shankara, that's Lord Shiva, offered, and Shankaracharya, who is an incarnation of Lord Shiva, offered his respects on the ground and spoke. Dear sir, you should always remember that Shankara is directly Shiva. Shankara is Guru for the Vaishnavas. Thus, Mahaprabhu has called him by the name Acharya. Shankara is a complete Vaishnava. When he appeared in India, there was a great need for a guna avatar of his nature. Guna avatar, there's 3 guna avatars. There's the guna avatar of goodness, which is Vishnu, guna avatar of passion, which is Lord Brahma, and the guna avatar of ignorance, who is Lord Shiva. So guna means rope, guna means modes of nature, avatar means to descend to this world. So Lord Shiva is the guna avatar of the mode of ignorance, and Shankaracharya is a manifestation of Lord Shiva. Studying the Vedas and following the rituals of Varnashram Dharma were almost absent in India because of the Shunyavada of Buddhists. Okay, explain that. Shunyavada means voidism. The Buddhist philosophy is a little different from the Mayavada or impersonal philosophy. The Buddhist philosophy says ultimately everything, well, not all Buddhists, there's different varieties of Buddhists, but here, they just lumping them all into one. Shunya means void, everything is void. So this is what's being discussed here. And actually, Buddha appeared, and Buddha, incidentally, did not teach that everything was void. Okay? Buddha just didn't. He taught a philosophical outlook on things. He taught material world is suffering. Suffering is caused by attachment. Give up the attachment. Then the suffering goes away, and follow the Eightfold Path. Those are the 4 noble truths, okay? But later on, Buddhism became understood by many people, not, as I said, there's so many branches of Buddhism, as a Shunyavada or voidistic philosophy. So this voidistic philosophy, of course, you had the Emperor Ashoka, who adopted Buddhism, and he practically converted all of India at that particular time to Buddhism. And Buddha was an incarnation of Krishna, but the reason Krishna appeared in such a form to propagate Buddhism was because people were misusing the Vedic literature. So it was necessary in order to justify animal killing, and also in order to justify exploitation of others in the name of Brahminical superiority. So therefore, the Buddhists were established in India, getting rid of the Brahminical culture for some time. It was necessary to do that because people were just misusing the Vedic literatures. But then Shankaracharya brought people back to the Vedas, but accepting something that was closer to Buddhism than the personal philosophy of Lord Chaitanya, because people weren't ready to come all the way back. And also he was preparing the grounds for the acharyas like Ramanujacharya and Nimbarkacharya, who appeared afterwards, who brought people back full circle. And of course, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who brought people not only full circle back, but to a transcendental realm. Although the followers accept a little of the nature of Jiva, its quality is extremely temporary. That's the Buddhists. At that time, almost all Brahmanas had become Buddhists and given up the path of the Vedas. I explain that. When Shankara, endowed with great power, appeared, he established respect for the Vedas and transformed Shunyavada into Brahmavada. Okay, transformed impersonalism, transformed voidism, into impersonalism. Everything is one. Instead of everything is nothing, everything is one. I can get more specific with that, but we don't have time. That act was extraordinary. India will be indebted to Shankara for this great accomplishment. So he brought people back to the Vedic literatures, which were at the time of Buddhism not respected. In this world, activities can be considered of two types. Some activities are short-lived and some spread their effect over all time. Shankara's great action was related to the moment, and from that action arose many good effects. So in other words, it was a stepping stone. It was not eternal Dharma. It was a necessary step in order to eventually get to eternal Dharma. And that was up to Shankara established the foundation. Here's what I mentioned before. On that foundation of belief in the Vedas, Ramanuja and Madhva and other acharyas, Nibarka and others, Vishnu Swami, later built a palace of pure Vaishnava Dharma. Thus, Shankara is a great friend of Vaishnava Dharma and a proper acharya. So even though what he taught was not proper, but he was creating a stepping stone so the proper acharyas could teach the absolute truth. So the Vaishnavas easily enjoy the wealth that Shankara established by showing the path of correct deliberation, the Vedas. For bound jivas, Sambandha Gyan is extremely necessary. Both the Vaishnavas and Shankara have faith. Okay. Sambandha. Okay, let's describe the Sambandha. For bound jivas, Sambandha Gyan is extremely necessary. I guess I have to explain that. The three aspects of understanding or coming to Krishna consciousness are Sambandha, Gyan, Abhideya, and Prayojana. Sambandha means to understand what we've described the last 2 days as the tattvas. That is, what is the jiva, the soul, individual soul? What is Krishna? Who is Krishna? And what is Krishna's energies, or what are Krishna's energies? To be more specific in better English, what are Krishna's and the relationship between them? So theoretical. Gyan means knowledge. Sambandha Gyan means the knowledge of the basic ontology. That's a big word. Ontology means the nature of the different eternal aspects, which are Krishna, the jiva, and Krishna's energy. Energies. It's a nice energies, but Krishna has one energy, and that energy expands to all the other energies. So Sambandha Gyan is necessary. It's not very important to understand what or the nature of God, that's called Vishnu, the nature of the soul, and the nature of Krishna's energies, both the material energy and the spiritual energy, which are both connected. One is an expansion of the other, and to understand their relationship, the relationship between these three different aspects of the absolute. I hope that explains that. Both the Vaishnavas and Shankara have faith that the spiritual substance is distinct from the gross and subtle bodies in the material world. They have no difference concerning the existence of the jiva. Giving up the relationship with the material world is called mukti, liberation for both parties. In other words, up to the point of attaining liberation or mukti, Shankara is in agreement with the Vaishnavacharyas. But he actually teaches at the time of reaching mukti, we lose our identity and merge into the absolute truth. Shankara also teaches that by worshiping the Lord, one attains the purity of mind and liberation. In other words, we worship the Lord for purity of mind and liberation, but that's a stepping stone also. He doesn't consider that to be, he considers, but he doesn't teach that. Shankara remained silent on the extraordinary goal of the jiva after attaining liberation. Shankara understood very well that when he could encourage the jiva on the path of liberation by worshiping the Lord, gradually the jiva would easily start to worship the Lord and attain pure bhakti. In other words, trick the jiva soul, trick us. Thus, Shankara, having shown the path, did not reveal the Vaishnava secret further. Those who deeply study Shankara's commentaries will understand his deeper intention. Those who simply spend their time accepting his external portion remain far away from the pure Vaishnava Dharma. In other words, there's a famous quote by Shankaracharya, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda Mudamate. You should worship Krishna, you worship Krishna and stop this speculation. In other words, that was his ultimate instruction. But one has to really study Shankara to understand what he ultimately wanted from his followers. Okay, with all that heavy philosophy, we are going to stop sharing at this particular point. And hold on a second. Everything's working well now. It's amazing. Amazing grace. So we're going to allow you to unmute yourselves. Okay, who has a question? Just raise your hand. I mean, he touched upon many philosophical points tonight. So raise your hand or unmute yourself or type in the chat window. All of these I can see or hear. Let me just. Does anyone want to unmute themselves? Anybody have any questions? Questions, comments, arguments, problems? Jagat.
What's the minimum sambandha for prema?
The minimum sambandha for prema. That's a good question. The minimum sambandha for prema is you have to understand, first of all, Krishna, God, you have to understand his expansions. You have to understand the relationships that Krishna has in the spiritual world, the 5 basic relationships. You have to understand the nature of the pure jiva, the spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. You have to understand the nature of the jiva. You have to understand the nature of the illusory energy. You have to understand that's Sambandhagan. But Sambandhagan in and of itself doesn't give you prema. So it's just, they're foundational principles. Simply having Sambandhagan is theoretical unless one takes up avideya and practices according to the knowledge in Sambandhagan and according to one's goal, and one has to have desire for prema too. So Sambandhagan is necessary, but it's, to use logical terms, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. But in other words, you need it, but in and of itself, it won't give you Krishna prema. But there's Sambandhagan you have to have is knowledge of Krishna. If you want to have Krishna prema and go back to Goloka Vrindavan, you have to understand Krishna's nature, the nature of his devotees, the nature of the spiritual world, the nature of the illusory energy, and the nature of the soul. Does that explain?
Yes, Sugary.
But that's just foundational. You have to have those things. Just like if you want to go somewhere, you have to understand how to drive, but you also have to get in your car and go somewhere. Now, simply understanding how to drive a car is not sufficient to get you anywhere. But you have to get in the car and drive somewhere and not speed and not get caught by the police while you're doing that. Maya's Krishna's place. All right. So, Adi. So only Vaishnavas can attain prema? Can Christians or Muslim attain some type of love of God? Actually, Prabhupada said that if one worships Muhammad and worships Jesus Christ, that person's a Vaishnava. So love of God is not something that we have an exclusive right to, or, people following the Vedic literatures. And in one sense, I mean, any literature which glorifies Krishna, Veda means knowledge, Vedanta means the end of knowledge. So any literature which is pure and glorifies the Supreme Personality Godhead and any of his various manifestations is Vedic. So certainly, yeah, Christians, if they follow, like Jesus, like Prabhupada would generally talk to Christians and find out if they followed. He would say, Jesus Christ says, thou shalt not kill. So why are you killing? Why are you eating meat? And so basically, and then Prabhupada visited one time a monastery, I forget which monastery, and Prabhupada appreciated so much the monks there, and he wrote in their guest book, very spiritual. So Prabhupada was not an exclusivist, thinking that, only we can have love of God. He did tell us that the philosophy that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us is the highest understanding of the nature of God, the highest understanding of the relationships with God. That, yes, that is true. But certainly Muslims, Christians, hey, what about Jewish people? You left them out. You're a bigot. All right. I can tell you have some racist blood in you. So anyway, so you haven't taken up the woke culture yet. So anyway, joking aside, yeah, we're not exclusive, so we don't tell people they're going to hell. Of course, we may tell people if you're eating meat, you're going to hell, but not because you're a Christian, you're going to hell. Because you're eating meat, you're going to Yamaraj, hell. So, good question. It was a private question, and I told everybody who it was. Anyways, too bad. So Shama Gashori, you have a question, you can unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev, please accept my obeisances.
Jai, all those Prabhupada.
Gurudev, you were saying that even the Christians, Muslims, they also get the pure love. So
Yeah.
after this lifetime, where do they go?
Where do they go? They may go to Vishnu Loka, certainly, unless they come to Krishna consciousness. But anyway, Krishna is very kind. Krishna is extremely kind. So what he may do is give them an experience of Krishna consciousness in their next life. They may become members of the Krishna consciousness movement or be exposed to some Gaudiya Vaishnava in the next life. So there's a variety of things. If someone is actually following Christianity, they could join Jesus Christ in the spiritual world, or they can come to Krishna consciousness, or take birth in Goloka Vrindavan, or by the mercy of a pure devotee, if they happen to meet a devotee on Sankirtan. I mean, there's all sorts of things, but their destination in terms of reaching God is assured if they're following strictly the particular Dharma. How it manifests, that's up to Krishna. I mean, they could serve Jesus Christ eternally in the spiritual world, or go to a Vaikuntha planet. Depends on their mood of service too. I mean, many Christians consider themselves to be the bride of God, many nuns. And this is sort of like bordering on Madhurya Prema, Madhurya Ras. So they may get the opportunity to learn about what that means in the next life, because that's their desire. I mean, like the sages in the Dandakaranya forest were meditating upon Lord Ram in a conjugal way, but then they took birth as the Munichara gopis when Krishna appeared and got a chance to associate with Krishna, Lord Ram in the form of Krishna. So Krishna, I'm sure Krishna has some really nice arrangement, and nobody's a loser because they didn't join the Hare Krishna movement.
Okay. Okay, Gurudev. Thank you.
Sectarian. Okay.
Yes, Gurudev.
Okay, very nice question. So I think we're going to end right now. Sorry for the technological trials in the beginning of the class. We'll try to get everything ironed up. I think I have a pretty good handle what the problem is, and I may need some technical assistance if Jagat is still around to solve it. Jagan, I think, left. Okay, so on that happy note, we'll see everybody tomorrow, same time, same station. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada.